I already know what's going to happen the moment this video goes live. Before anyone even finishes watching, the comments will start flooding in. Why are you comparing Kuala Lumpur to New York? That makes no sense. New York is dirty. New York is dangerous. New York is finished. And honestly, I get it. But pause for a second, because when I say Kuala Lumpur feels like New York, I'm not talking about New York today. I'm not talking about headlines, politics, rats, crime stats, or whatever clip you saw last week on social media. I'm talking about New York in its prime, the version everyone secretly romanticizes, the 80s energy, Wall Street dominance, Gordon Gekko ambition, the city that never slept, the place where it felt like anything was possible if you were hungry enough. And here's the strange part. If you spend enough time in Kuala Lumpur, especially around KLCC, you'll know exactly what I mean. So why does that comparison make people so uncomfortable? Let me be clear before anyone tries to clip this out of context. I've never actually been to New York. I probably should say that up front. But let's be honest, most people don't love New York because of what it is today. They love the idea of New York, the myth, the symbol, the city that represented ambition, momentum, and global importance. Maybe that New York doesn't exist anymore. Maybe it faded. Maybe it changed. But that exact feeling, that's what Kuala Lumpur feels like right now. And that's why, to me, KL feels like the New York of Southeast Asia. But what exactly creates that feeling? Some people will immediately say Singapore. And sure, Singapore is impressive, it's efficient, it's clean, it's polished, almost too polished. Singapore feels almost utopian. But New York in its prime wasn't utopian. It had grit. It had rawness. It had an edge. And that edge is something Kuala Lumpur has that Singapore doesn't. KL feels alive in a way that's hard to explain until you're standing in the middle of it. So what is it about this city that gives off that same energy? First, KL feels like a serious city, not a tourist playground, not a place that shuts down early, not a city pretending to be important. This is a city where business actually gets done. You feel it when you walk through KLCC. The payers, the way people move, the atmosphere. It feels like a place with momentum, a place that matters. That's what New York used to be. That's what made it iconic. And speaking of iconic, this is where the comparison really starts to make sense. The skyline. But what is the skyline actually telling us? Think about the most famous cities in the world. New York, London, Paris. You don't need labels. You don't need context. You show someone a picture of the skyline and they instantly know where it is. And more than that, it triggers a feeling, ambition, opportunity, possibility. That's what made New York's skyline legendary. And Kuala Lumpur now has that same effect. The Petronas Twin Towers, the KL Tower, Merdeka 118, the second tallest building in the world. TRX rising into the financial future. You see one photo and you know immediately, that's KL. No confusion, no guessing. It has an identity in the sky. And when a city owns its skyline, it's telling the world something. Compare that to many other big cities. Bangkok, for example. You can spot one or two buildings, but the rest blends together. Some cities just look like a random cluster of towers. Glass everywhere, but no soul, no signature. KL is different. It's recognizable, memorable, distinct. And that matters more than people realize. But a skyline alone doesn't make a city feel like New York. So what else is going on? Walk through KLCC and look around carefully. Corporate towers, banks, high-end malls, Dior, luxury brands, people in suits, people with purpose. It feels like a financial district, the kind of place where deals are happening behind tinted glass. The kind of place people imagine Manhattan used to feel like. That intense, focused business energy. You get the same vibe in places like Canary Wharf, in London, or Singapore's CBD. But here's the funny thing. Despite all that power and density, KLCC feels calmer, cleaner, more relaxed. I genuinely feel safer walking around here than I would in many Western financial districts. And that contrast is wild. How does a city feel powerful without feeling suffocating? This might sound ridiculous, but I'll say it anyway. A big part of my mental image of Manhattan came from GTA 4. Driving through that digital city surrounded by skyscrapers, feeling like the world was moving fast and you had to keep up. And walking through KLCC gave me that exact same feeling, except this time, it was real people, real buildings, real momentum. And when a real city reminds you of a virtual version of ambition, you have to ask yourself, where is this city going next? And it's not just KLCC. Even areas like Bukit Bintang have that Times Square energy. Lights, movement, people everywhere. It feels busy but not chaotic, alive but not overwhelming. And that leads into another big similarity people overlook. Kuala Lumpur doesn't sleep. This city has momentum around the clock. People eating at 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. Malls open late. Streets active. Construction never stopping. Business always moving. KL feels like a city that's going somewhere, not a city that's slowing down. So why do people react so negatively to that idea? Here's the real issue. When people hear KL is like New York, they're reacting to what New York has become, not what it once represented. They hear chaos, decline, danger, disorder. But that's not what this comparison is about at all. New York in its prime was the most iconic city in the world. It was the symbol of global ambition. And if we're being honest, many Western cities today don't feel like they're improving anymore. Europe feels stagnant. America feels tired. Things feel heavier, messier, slower. And when you contrast that with what's happening in Southeast Asia, especially in Malaysia, the difference is impossible to ignore. So what does that shift mean for the future? When you really step back and look at what's happening, the comparison starts to feel less controversial and more obvious. Because this isn't just about buildings or vibes. It's about where energy is moving. And energy never lies. You can feel it the moment you arrive. There's a sense that people here still believe in the future. Not in an abstract way, but in a practical, everyday way. People are building, people are trying, people are hungry, and that alone separates Kuala Lumpur from a lot of cities that used to dominate the world conversation. Back home, especially across much of the Western world, something feels off. You can't always explain it with numbers, but you feel it in conversations. People sound tired, defeated, cynical. There's a lot of what's the point, energy, a lot of waiting for things to get worse instead of better. And when you land in KL, that mindset shock hits you immediately. Here, the default attitude is different. It's more like, we can make this work. We can build something here. There's still opportunity, and that mentality changes everything. Despite what people assume about Asia from the outside, this region isn't stuck in the past. If anything, it feels like the future is being quietly assembled here. Young professionals are everywhere. Remote workers are moving in. Entrepreneurs are testing ideas. Investors are paying attention. You don't hear as much complaining about the system being broken. Instead, you hear people asking how to navigate it, how to move faster within it. And Kuala Lumpur sits right in the middle of that shift. It's not pretending to be perfect. Malaysians don't hide the flaws, but the city has momentum. The real question is, how long can that momentum last? This is where people misunderstand the New York comparison the most. They think it means copying. It doesn't. KL isn't trying to be New York. It doesn't need to. New York didn't become iconic by copying anyone either. It became iconic because it owned its moment in history, and that's what Kuala Lumpur feels like it's doing now. It's finding its place in the global story, not as a replica, but as its own character. Singapore already carved out its role. Hyper-efficient, hyper-organized, a global hub. KL is different, it's messier, more human, more flexible, and sometimes that flexibility is exactly what creates opportunity. Look at the direction the world is heading. Capital is more mobile than ever. Work is more flexible than ever. People aren't tied to one place anymore. And when that happens, cities start competing in a new way. Not just on GDP, but on lifestyle, cost, energy, and opportunity. Kuala Lumpur checks boxes people didn't even realize they were looking for. It's global without being overwhelming, ambitious without being exhausting, affordable without feeling cheap. And that balance is rare. There's also something subtle but important happening culturally. In many Western countries, ambition is starting to feel almost frowned upon. Like wanting more makes you selfish or unrealistic. In KL, ambition still feels normal, even encouraged. People want better lives, better businesses, better cities, and they're not embarrassed to say it. That mindset creates an ecosystem where progress feels possible. And historically, that's always been the foundation of great cities. New York had it, London had it, Tokyo had it, and now KL is quietly building it. This is why calling KL the New York of Southeast Asia isn't an insult. It's not about decline, it's about timing. Every great city has a window where everything aligns. Talent, capital, optimism, momentum. Miss that window and you spend decades trying to recreate it. Catch it early and you ride the wave. Right now, KL feels like a city inside that window, growing, evolving, becoming more confident in its identity. But can it grow without losing what makes it special? Part 5, approximately 520 words. Of course, it's not perfect. No city worth talking about ever is. But what matters more than perfection is direction. And KL's direction feels forward, upward, outward. When you compare that to cities that feel stuck managing decline instead of planning growth, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. This is why so many people who visit end up staying longer than planned. This is why so many people who leave keep talking about coming back. There's something here that's hard to define but easy to feel. And once you feel it, it changes how you look at the rest of the world. Kuala Lumpur isn't looking backward. It's not trying to reclaim a past version of itself. It's building towards something new. And in a world where so many places feel like they're clinging to what they used to be, that alone makes KL stand out. I'm bullish on Southeast Asia because it feels alive. It feels hungry. It feels unfinished in the best possible way. And unfinished places are where the future usually gets built. When I say KL feels like New York, I'm not talking about problems. I'm talking about identity, ambition, belief. A city that believes in its future is a dangerous thing in the best way possible. New York had that belief once. KL has it now. And if momentum continues, this comparison won't sound controversial anymore. It'll sound obvious, retrospective. Like one of those moments people say, yeah, you could see it coming. So maybe Kuala Lumpur really is the New York of Southeast Asia. And maybe that's a very good thing. The only question left is this: will you notice it early, or will you look back later and wonder how you missed it? If this surprised you, wait till you see what's next. We break down places, systems, and lifestyles in ways nobody else is talking about. New stories, bigger questions, zero fluff. Subscribe now, because the next video might completely change how you see life.